So, as you probably may or know, be aware, we are very, very pro building HS2 on this channel. It needs to be built. It really, really does. And if you want any reason why it should be built, then just look at the Japanese Shinkansen, the high speed rail they have over there. 60 years ago, it was built. Guess what? Japanese people didn't like it, came in over budget, took longer to build than expected. Yet, if you now go and you look at the polling of what Japanese people think of it, there is, I guarantee, not one. I almost guarantee not one Japanese person would come out and say, "Yeah, building that was a terrible idea." Especially building it when they did, and it's become like a very much a symbol of like renewal of like the country from like the World War II era, all kinds of stuff about that. But you look at all the benefits it brought. It adds billions of yen a year to the economy. It's paid for itself, several times over. Not only that, but be able to expand the network as well. you know, every single place, every single country that has built high speed rail, the story is exactly the same. Probably more expensive than people thought, took longer to build than people thought, but the benefits of when it's built just overwhelmingly make it all worth it. But it is a long-term project. You are talking, at least a decade to get it built. So we need to really, get on it. And I think this is something Labour should really, really look at and really make sure this thing gets funded in full, because this is just worth it completely. And maybe, you borrow so much, but there are other ways to fund it, you sell maybe like shares in the railway, etc. There's a ton of different ways they could fund it. We've talked about that before in the past. But now that, Labour are, especially this week, renationalizing rail, well, what an amazing way to cap that off, to say that we're going to build HS2. So, of course, as you may have guessed, we're talking about, guess what? HS2 and a new study that, guess what, finds, well, pays for itself. Once again, proving the anti-HS2 crowd very, very much so wrong, which I always find wonderful on that score. So, as always, before we go diving into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one of today's link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there's the Pony Club down below as well. And of course, 'tis Wednesday, so if you are part of the Patreon or the Pony Club, there will be a brand new Pony Club video for all of you guys. And of course, if you join that, either the Patreon or the Pony Club, well, then you'll gain access to all the other Pony Club videos that I've made as well. So, let's crack on then into this, coming from The Guardian, with the title of "Building HS2 to Euston and Crewe Would Pay for Itself, Analysis Finds." So, building HS2 all the way to London Euston and Crewe would save the government money by enabling it now to lease out the line for much more. Rail industry leaders have now told ministers, as the Treasury now weighs up to whether fund the tunnels to central London. The High Speed Rail Group proposed selling the rights to now run the line as a long-term concession on a smaller basis to the HS1 rail route linking the capital to the Channel Tunnel. Such a concession would be worth about £20 billion if a fully developed from central London and now joining other lines to northern cities. But that would just be a fraction of that under the current plans to terminate now at Old Oak Common and Birmingham, according to analysis for the High Speed Rail Group. So as you can already see, if you build it properly, you build HS2 properly, which we've always said, guess what? 20 billion. You just get 20 billion from selling the rights to run the line alone. 20 billion. That's half the funding of like HS2. You know, just we've always when we've talked about this, always been baffled by the fact that every single time this has come up, and bear in mind, this is not the first time this has been talked about, that because of the previous government limiting it, you know, you know, cutting off the northern route, reducing the size of like the HS2 initially, that basically makes HS2 worth a lot less money. Whereas if you build it properly, guess what? You gain a lot more money from it. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought building something properly and running it properly would be such a benefit? Anyway, the coalition, of course, rail and engineering companies, whose members now include Hitachi, Alstom, Siemens, and West Avani Coast, argue that spending billions more now to reach the Euston and Crewe would still save the Treasury £3.5 billion in the long run. The claims now come as the government now decides whether to now reinstate the tunnelling work at Euston, and is now at a critical juncture in construction. Two giant tunnel boring machines from Germany are still being installed at Old Oak Common, despite the last government suspending the wider works. After the construction contractors warned that it would be hugely more costly and more difficult to contemplate tunnelling once the West London station was complete. While the Transport Secretary, Lewis Haig, has now indicated that the government wants to ensure HS2 reaches into central London, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has also asked ministers to draw up now billions of pounds worth of infrastructure cuts. Again, we'll find out what all that means probably in a couple of weeks' time. So, fingers crossed for that HS2 gets built, because if you build it properly, it just makes infinite economic sense to do it. So, according to these reports, though, Reeves is nevertheless now planning to announce guarantees for HS2 to Euston in the 30th of October budget. However, the funding mechanism is, of course, still not clear, with Labour still having it said it would not overturn Rishi Sunak's shock axing of the HS2 construction into central London and north of Birmingham last October. Again, something that they really need to overturn. It does not make sense. The whole benefit for HS2 was building it beyond Birmingham to help solve the capacity issues that exist beyond Birmingham. Otherwise, you make it into an even worse bottleneck and you guarantee future rail chaos. you know, um, Congratulations. Although, of course, Labour has been pledging to nationalise train operating companies, it has also said and wooed private investors to now potentially build more infrastructure. HS1 was sold by the government back in 2010 for around £2.1 billion as a 30-year concession to two Canadian pension funds, which then resold the rights to another private equity investor back in 2017 for around £3 billion. Concession owners are, of course, recouped the investment through the track access charges to operators such as Eurostar and income now from the St Pancras station. In analysis by the group and the policy group, Green Gauge 21, the current line from Old Oak Common to Birmingham Curzon Street will cost around 47 billion. But this is now limitations, meaning that the rail that would have potentially have a concession value of only 5 billion. However, building onto Euston and Crewe would now cost another 11.5 and could make now it worth over 20 billion. So if you are willing to spend that extra 11.5, then it is worth over 20 billion, not 5. That is worth the investment. We always keep on saying this whenever this comes up. It is worth it. These high-speed rail trains pay for themselves, but you've got to build them properly. If you don't, then guess what? It's only worth 5 billion. Whereas if you built it properly, it's worth 20 billion. You know? Anyway, the National Audit Office, among others, has also warned that the truncated HS2 now risks worsening the current services north of Birmingham, as we said, owing to lack of capacity when high-speed trains then join now the overcrowded West Coast line. Again, build HS2 properly. Dean Perry, the chair of the group and former chief executive of HS1, said that that appearances of the forthcoming budget will involve ministers making very tough choices. However, the short-term decisions to cut in investment into infrastructure would be deeply damaging to the UK, creating now uncertainty and jeopardizing now investor confidence. We strongly urge the Treasury and the officials to carefully consider our recommendations and take action to ensure that the UK can fully realise the benefits now of a connected rail network. Bear in mind, Reeves constantly saying, we want to unleash growth. We want to unleash growth in the UK. Guess what? If you've got good transport infrastructure, a fully connected rail network, guess what? Creates growth, creates money for the government. This has been done everywhere that there's been high-speed rail trains built. They are all constantly making money, but they all cost more than people thought, took longer to build, but once they're built, and guess what? It becomes worth it. Because now you can sell a concessions to sort of help reap that money back from, it goes from 5 billion to 20 billion. Makes more sense and better long-term sense to do it this way. This is what we're always saying, that we hope that Labour does not take pointless, damaging short-term decisions. We've had enough of governments doing that. They really need to take a long look at the big picture, and HS2 is a very big, long-looking big picture at this. So, fingers crossed. So, of course, let's finish this off. The wider fate, of course, Euston Station is, of course, still to be decided, with now uncertainty over HS2 putting now full rebuilding now on hold. The Department for Transport and Network Rail last week announced that the short-term plan to urgently improve the overcrowded and unappealing terminus, including now immediately turning off the much criticized enormous advertising screen. So, what will happen? I don't know. We'll find out soon, but God damn, we need this. We need HS2. I just can't express why you don't build this. Honestly, why you do not build all this stuff does not make a lick of sense when you look at it. It's just like frustrations upon frustrations. But there you go. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, please remember to click the like and, of course, the share. And, of course, links down below to help support the channel as well. And, of course, we'll see you all next time.